commented underneath that video, "We want to see Steph make 12 threes a game. Stop grabbing him, please."
So, here's what just went down that has everyone talking. Steph Curry's personal shooting coach keeps posting about Caitlin Clark on social media. Then Steph shows up wearing her signature Nike kicks. But wait, there's more. Word is starting to spread that she might actually be training with his shooting coach right now. And then Caitlin drops a comment on one of Steph's recent interviews that has people connecting dots everywhere. These two are clearly building something, and the timing couldn't be more perfect. Real quick though, let me ask you this. If Caitlin Clark is really working out with the same shooting coach who trains Steph Curry during this offseason, does that make her absolutely terrifying for next season? Or are we all just getting caught up in off-season rumors? Let me know what you think, because this whole situation actually matters way more than it seems.
He has seen it. But Caitlin Clark commented underneath that video, "We want to see Steph make 12 threes a game. Stop grabbing him, please." And she never really, she would say when something was a foul or to, a complaint to that ilk. But Caitlin hasn't come out and said, what they're doing isn't basketball that often.
All right, so Caitlin's been doing her usual thing on social media lately, staying engaged with fans and players. But she posted something recently that made everyone stop scrolling and start analyzing. Steph had just finished a game where the Hornets were literally face-guarding him like he owed them money, and he did an interview about it afterward. Caitlin saw the video and left this comment that got everyone's attention. She wrote, "We want to see Steph make 12 threes a game. Stop grabbing him, please."
There's a part of you that, fights it just because it's not real basketball, but there's also a part of it that's flattering. Just knowing that you demand that much attention, and also what it does to create shots for other guys on the floor. So, and I've seen it all, so I know if that's how they want to guard, how I can be effective, not let it take me out of the game, but also kind of use it to our advantage as a team. And then it's also funny at times just how egregious it is. There's one possession, I gotta find I'm actually get the footage. I actually stayed back in the backcourt a long time on purpose just to see how long Sion would stay with me. So that was a fun one.
Yeah, there's a clip of Colin Sexton covering you when you left the court.
Yeah, we both knew what we were doing. We were having fun.
Last one.
Now look, at first glance, that just sounds like one superstar backing up another superstar, right? But when you're Caitlin Clark and you're specifically calling out grabbing and holding, people are going to read deeper into it. Because guess physical harassment and constant grabbing has been the story of her entire WNBA experience so far. Let's break down what Steph actually said in that interview because it connects to everything. When they asked him about dealing with the way Charlotte was defending him, his answer was absolutely perfect. He said part of him gets frustrated because it's not real basketball. But then he also said there's something flattering about it because it shows how much attention he commands and how it opens things up for his teammates.
Caitlin Clark, and you get the attention that she does, you're going to get outsized defensive attention. In a rookie season, she was blitzed more to start that year than any team. A lot of that is strategy. They know what she can do. They know where she has the ball, all that stuff. But then there's part of it like trying to prove a point against her. And then, of course, when you want to rough up the other team's star, that's what coaches preach. If the refs are going to let you do it, you do it. It's something that became a point of contention across her WNBA career so far, with Stephanie White, who probably deployed that strategy with the Connecticut Sun, saying that too much contact is allowed on the perimeter. And that's a thing across the WNBA, and it became a theme across the WNBA. But, Caitlin is allowed to be grabbed and held and all those things. Even to the point where I remember there was a broadcast where Rebecca Lobo pointed out, like, there's a foul, and there's a foul, and there's a foul, like Oprah giving some.
That line about it's not real basketball is doing some heavy lifting here. What Steph is basically saying, in the most diplomatic way possible, is that when teams just resort to grabbing and holding and face guarding instead of actually playing defense, they're not running legitimate strategy. They're just showing desperation and calling it being physical. Caitlin Clark understands that feeling better than almost anyone. She lived through it for her entire rookie WNBA season. Teams were sending double teams and triple teams at her the moment she touched the ball past half court. She got grabbed, bumped, held, and pushed on basically every single possession she played. Now some of that stuff is just smart basketball. When you're going up against the most dangerous shooter in the league, you have to adjust your defensive approach. But a lot of what happened to her crossed way over the line into contact that would get whistled as fouls in literally any other situation. And somehow, WNBA referees just decided to let it slide. Even Stephanie White, who's coaching Caitlin now in Indiana but was coaching against her in Connecticut last year, went on record saying there's too much contact allowed on perimeter players throughout the entire league. Rebecca Lobo was doing commentary during one of Caitlin's games and started pointing out uncalled fouls so fast it was like she was handing out free cars. Foul for you, everybody gets a foul that's not getting called. But here's the thing. Caitlin herself has stayed pretty quiet about all this publicly. She's called out specific plays when they were obviously dirty, like that Kennedy Carter shoulder check that was clearly not a basketball move. But she hasn't gone on some public crusade saying the way teams defend her isn't legitimate basketball. She hasn't made it her mission to complain about officiating. So when she jumps into Steph's comments and says, "Stop grabbing him," that feels like something bigger. She's not making it about herself, but she's definitely speaking from experience. It's actually brilliant because she gets to make her point without looking like she's whining or asking for special treatment. And honestly, she's completely right. People absolutely want to see Steph drain 12 threes in a game. That's why his jersey sales are through the roof. That's why arenas sell out when he's playing. That's why his signature shoes have people camping outside stores. His shooting ability is what makes him must-see television. When teams just grab him to prevent that, it makes the entire game worse for everyone watching. The exact same logic applies to Caitlin. Fans want to watch her pull up from 30 feet and drill impossible shots. They want to see her thread passes through triple teams. They want to see her break records and do things nobody else can do. That's why WNBA attendance literally doubled when she was playing. That's why her games were getting national television coverage. When defenses just mug her and refs don't call it, the product gets worse. The WNBA has somehow convinced itself that allowing excessive physicality makes the league look tougher or more legitimate. But that's completely backward thinking. The NBA doesn't allow that level of grabbing and holding specifically because they want their superstars to be able to showcase what makes them special. They understand that people buy tickets to watch offensive brilliance, not defensive mugging. You've got Chelsea Gray complaining about this. Becky Hammond has been vocal about it. Natasha Cloud has called it out. Stephanie White has spoken up about it. This is affecting elite perimeter players and shooters across the entire league. But Caitlin has been diplomatic about it, probably because she knows that publicly complaining about referees can make you look soft or like you're making excuses for losses. Commenting on Steph's situation gives her perfect cover to make the same point without it being directly about her own treatment. It's smart strategy. Now let's talk about these other connections between Caitlin and Steph that have people speculating about what's happening behind the scenes. Steph wore her Nike shoes to a game recently. His personal shooting coach keeps posting about her online. And based on all the context clues, there's a real possibility that Caitlin is working out with Steph's shooting coach during this offseason. We don't have official confirmation, but the evidence is pretty compelling. And if it's true, that's absolutely massive for her development. This is the shooting coach who works with the greatest shooter in basketball history. The techniques, drills, and training methods that have kept Steph elite for more than a decade would be incredibly valuable for Caitlin's game. It makes perfect sense when you think about it. Caitlin is already the most dangerous shooter in women's basketball, but if she can refine her mechanics even more, improve her shot preparation, and add new elements based on what's worked for Steph, she becomes completely unstoppable. The connection between them makes sense from every angle. Nike has major investments in both players. They're both smaller guards who completely changed how people think about shooting range. They both deal with the same kind of defensive attention and physical harassment. The parallels are obvious. Steph has always been supportive of women's basketball. He talks about wanting his daughters to see strong role models in the WNBA. Caitlin represents exactly the kind of player who could inspire the next generation, the same way Steph got kids shooting from half-court at playgrounds everywhere. The alignment of values and playing styles creates natural mutual respect. But there's definitely a competitive edge here too. Caitlin isn't satisfied with just being good. She wants championships. She wants to be legendary. If working with Steph's team during the offseason gives her any advantage, she's absolutely smart enough to take that opportunity. The timing of everything is really interesting too. Caitlin made another social media comment recently that caught people's attention. Elijah Sarrett, who plays receiver for Indiana and is about to play in the College Football National Championship, posted that his dog is named Caitlin Clark. Caitlin responded saying, "Both the player and the dog are welcome courtside this year. Not if there's a season." She just casually confirmed that games are happening. She's confident the collective bargaining negotiations are going to get resolved and the WNBA season is moving forward as planned. And she's probably right, because she's the biggest piece of leverage the players have in those negotiations. The entire reason WNBA players are in position to demand massive salary increases is because of what happened during Caitlin's first season. Attendance records got shattered. Television viewership went through the roof. Merchandise sales exploded. Corporate sponsors who had ignored the WNBA for decades suddenly wanted partnerships. That's all directly because of Caitlin and the attention she brought to the league. So when she says there's going to be a season this year, that carries serious weight. If Caitlin thought there was any real chance of no season happening, she'd be way more careful with her language. The fact that she's casually inviting people to courtside games suggests she knows something about where those negotiations stand that the public doesn't. Caitlin spoke at a USA basketball event recently and said none of the collective bargaining stuff matters if they're not actually playing games. She called it the most important moment in WNBA history and said players need to fight for what they believe in, while also being willing to compromise on other issues. That's remarkably mature and strategic thinking for someone in their second year. But it also shows that Caitlin understands her position perfectly. She's the main driving force behind the players' leverage. Her voice should absolutely matter in these negotiations, because she's the one bringing in the revenue that makes higher salaries possible in the first place. The difference between NBA and WNBA officiating is pretty stark when you really look at it. The NBA has problems with players flopping and trying to sell contact that barely happened. The WNBA has the exact opposite problem, where obvious contact gets completely ignored. Both situations are terrible for the product, just in different ways. When Steph says that excessive face guarding and grabbing isn't real basketball, WNBA decision-makers should be paying attention, because he's absolutely right. Real basketball is about skill, spacing, movement, and execution. When defenses can just grab elite shooters and prevent them from getting clean looks without any consequences, the entire game suffers. Caitlin dealt with this constantly throughout her rookie year. Teams would put their most physical defender on her with specific instructions to just make her uncomfortable, bump her off screens, hold her on cuts, hand check her while she's bringing the ball up court. And referees would let most of it slide, because there's this weird culture in the WNBA that treats excessive physicality like some badge of honor. The Kennedy Carter play was the most obvious example of this. That wasn't defense. That was just a cheap shot designed to send a message. Caitlin called it out as not being a basketball play, and she was completely right. But that was so egregious that she felt comfortable speaking up about it. The more subtle grabbing and holding that happens on every possession is harder to call out publicly without seeming like you're complaining. So commenting on Steph's situation gives her the perfect way to address it. She's not complaining about her own treatment. She's supporting another elite player who deals with similar issues. But anyone who's been paying attention knows she's talking about her own experience too. That comment about wanting to see Steph make 12 threes a game is particularly revealing, because that's exactly what people want from Caitlin too. They want to see her launch shots from the logo, they want to see her break records, they want to see offensive brilliance. not defensive mugging. If the WNBA really wants to grow, and they clearly do based on expansion plans and increased media deals, they need to let their superstars shine. That means officiating the game in a way that allows elite offensive players to showcase their skills. It doesn't mean eliminating all physicality, but it means finding the right balance. The partnership between Caitlin and Steph is only going to get stronger if she's actually working with his shooting coach. The techniques that have kept Steph elite into his late 30s could extend Caitlin's prime and help her avoid some of the wear and tear that comes with being the main focus of every defensive game plan. Picture Caitlin coming back next season with even more refined mechanics, better shot preparation, and new elements to her game based on what she learned from Steph's team. She's already the most dangerous offensive weapon in the WNBA. If she gets even better, defenses are going to resort to even more desperate tactics to slow her down. Which brings us right back to the officiating issue. As Caitlin continues improving and becomes more unstoppable, the physical harassment is probably going to increase unless the league actually does something about it. Her comment on Steph's interview might be the opening move in that larger conversation. It's way too risky to start some public campaign complaining about officiating. That strategy never works and usually makes things worse. But by aligning herself with Steph and commenting on the same issues he faces, she can put pressure on the league without making herself look like the problem. The fact that Stephanie White, who used those exact physical defensive tactics against Caitlin when she was coaching in Connecticut, is now coaching her in Indiana, adds another interesting layer. White knows exactly how effective that strategy was against Caitlin, and she also knows it's not good for the league long term. Having her as an advocate for better officiating carries serious weight because she's not just defending her player. She's acknowledging a problem that affects the entire league. Caitlin Clark, working with Steph Curry's shooting coach, while calling out the same defensive tactics they both face, isn't just coincidence. This is about building her game and building her platform to change how the WNBA gets officiated. The league better get ready, because something big is coming.